All right. So I just wanted to tell you about what to write in the analysis. Analysis of a non-empirical thesis would include both findings and discussion. Okay. Findings. What does findings include? Findings is the presentation of your data. In this case, your data will be your text, which could be novel, story, poetry. Okay. And then in the discussion, we actually interpret that in the light of your literature review and framework. Interpretation of findings in relation to your literature review and theoretical framework. So basically what you're doing is you are arguing what your findings mean in the result in the light of your literature review and theoretical framework. For example, if you are doing a feminist analysis of A Doll's House and you have found some elements of patriarchy in your chosen novel, you underline those and you find out what they're trying to say, what those lines are trying to say, and then you write about them together. You present that data together in one paragraph, for example. You say, Ibsen is trying to point out that patriarchy was common in the times when the novel was written. We can see patriarchy in the characters of Nora and her husband. And then you present some textual references to support that. Now, in the discussion, you will have to interpret that in the light of your literature review and theoretical framework. Say, for example, if you have chosen Beauvoir's framework, you will bring a reference to Beauvoir in the interpretation of your findings. You would say, in the light of what Beauvoir has written, patriarchal representation of Nora is quite similar to what was expected by Beauvoir. Similar findings have been found in a number of studies, such as this, and or however, such findings are not found in the literature review. For example, this study has argued that there is no patriarchy in Doll's House. Rather, there is only negation of civil rights. Something, right? How do you do that? This was just me trying to tell you the difference between findings and discussion. What exactly do you need to do? Now, when we start working, the first thing that you do is you decide what your you have already decided what the elements of your theoretical framework are in your methodology chapter. So now you take the elements of the framework one by one and look for them in the chosen text. Okay, so this is the procedure that you need to follow. The first step is take the elements of the framework one by one and look for them in the chosen text. You may highlight them with different colors, or you may make tables. Well, I prefer tables because I think in tables, what you get is everything in front of you. So for the first element, for example, Mac, what is your framework and what's your first element?
Ma'am, my framework is Kamala Bhasin's theory, and in which I'll be analyzing the social, economic, and mental exploitation of women in which is represented in Pakistani fiction.
Right. So if you take social, you could do social with highlight with blue, and economic with pink, and political with yellow. And then what you would have to do is you would have to go through the text again and again. You would be flipping a lot of pages. But if you put them in a table, like under social, you put all the quotations that are related to social exploitation of women. Under political, you put all the things that have been said in the novels that you've chosen about novels or stories. about political exploitation of women, economic exploitation of women, then you get everything in front of you. You can see it all together. So it's just a technical thing. यो ज़रूरी कोन्हे कि तव्हां या हाईलाइट कयो या टेबल में विझो, कोई बि हिकिड़ो ज़रूरी न आहे हिननि ॿिन्ही मां, तव्हां कुझु बि करे था सघो जीअं तव्हांखे आसान लॻे. मूंखे टेबल्स आसान लॻंदियूं आहिनि इन करे जो सॼो कुझु तव्हांजे अॻियां हूंदो आहे. यू डोंट हैव टू चेंज पेजेस, घड़ी घड़ी टर्न न करणो पवंदो. So once you've done that, what you get is a list of quotations under each of those elements of your framework. Now what you need to do is you need to read them together, the lines of text under each element together, and decide what the author is saying about each element. Okay? Now, you have to read the lines of the text under each element together and decide what the author is saying about each element. Then write the findings. Write what you think the author is saying about each element separately. Support with lines from the text. So say, for example, if you're saying the social exploitation of women is pointed out through different events and characters, then you would give examples of events, you would give examples of characters, quoting exact lines of the text that you have chosen, and then you can explain them in your own words before moving on to the political and economic elements. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, moving on. Now, this is the procedure for findings. And then we have the procedure for discussion. Now, what you need to do is read each of the findings section. Decide what you wish to argue on the basis of the findings. It might be a good idea to read your literature review and framework as well, so that you can make the arguments in your head. And then write your argument in connection with literature review and framework. So you would be using references of things that have already been written in your chapter 2 and 3. Say, for example, regarding your social exploitation, you said that it's presented in characters and events. So you might want to argue on the basis of literature review that social exploitation is common in Pakistani literature, as shown in these stories. And then you give examples from other stories as well from your literature review, and then you connect it with your framework. This is something similar to what has been said by Passon, or this is something that is mentioned in Passon. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It's clear.
Okay. Now, how do you present this presentation of your findings and discussion? Could be in 2 chapters, could be in different chapters, or could be in same chapters arranged thematically or according to your research questions. So you could arrange them according to the arguments you're making. You could arrange them according to the elements of the framework that you're using, or you could arrange them according to the research questions and sub-questions that you have made in your first chapter. So it could be like you do the social, political, and economic exploitation of women's findings in one chapter, and then discussion in the next chapter. It could be that you arrange them thematically, like you want to do social exploitation of women. In that, you have one paragraph of findings, then one paragraph of discussion, then findings, then discussion, and then you move on to the next element and you do a similar thing. So there are many ways of organizing it. It's up to you to decide. I think once you have done the first part, which is reading the data and finding out what you want to say about it, then you would be in a better position to decide whether you want to present it in different chapters or in the same chapters. In non-empirical research, in literature, I think more common is doing both of them together in the same chapters.